What is up, Packers fans? Welcome into Happy Hour. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. It is great to be back chatting with you guys. It's been a second. We didn't have Happy Hour last week. If I remember, I was on vacation. So it's been, I think, a couple of weeks since we've had Happy Hour, but great to be back. And we'll get to as many questions as we can. About 45 minutes today. I do have to get my kids to soccer practice. So I do have that coming up here in just a little bit. Of course, super chats will always go to the top of the list. You do need to be a subscriber in order, not a member, but just a subscriber. You just have to click that subscribe button in order to get your questions in. So super easy to do. And once we get to about 15 minutes left, I'm going to go through and get to as many questions as we can as well. So we'll get to as many as I can over the course of the next 45 minutes. But let's get this started right away. Eric, you got in at 6:09 this morning to get your question in. Appreciate that. Happy Friday, Andy. If you had to filibuster by naming random Packers, how long would you last? Oh, that is a great question. Eric, here's the interesting / funny thing. I have been doing Immaculate Grid for the first time, and my friends were like, oh, Andy will be able to do football ones forever. I am so disappointed with my brain when it comes to like historical sports figures and things like that. I've like lost everything. It is so annoying, frustrating, all of it. So I think I could go a long time. I mean, I guess it's just names, right? So at some point you're going to reach a limitation. Like I can probably only go back to like the 90s, and there's still going to be a lot of guys that, I mean, I can go before that with certain players, of course, your Bart Stars, your Ray Nitschkes, etc. But I mean, I probably couldn't reach an hour, right? Like just naming names, like just naming Packers nonstop. Could I get to an hour? Should we try it right now? That's a really good question. Maybe I'll just, try to do it before I fall asleep one night and see how far I can get. But it's a lot harder exercise than I think I would like it to be. And even Immaculate Grid now with former NBA and NFL and Major League Baseball players is ticking me the crap off that I can't like just immediately think of somebody. So it's not probably as long as I would like it to go. All right. Chicken and the front office. Oh, sorry. It's maybe this was the first one. It's funny to remember what random players the 21 team had: Damon Snacks Harrison, Jalen Smith, Randall Cobb, Whitney Merciless, real season, and the front office. And does it appear, I don't know if maybe I'm just missing the first piece of that, Chicken. But to answer your second part, yes, there's always those random Packers that were part of the team, whether it was even just like a training camp, Vince Carter, Kajana Carter, Cedric Benson. Like there's just always weird Terry Glenn. I know that was a larger one, but these random group of Packers that, you just never like think of them as Green Bay Packers, Steve McMichael, etc. But they played for the team, Jim McMahon. So those are always interesting ones. But yes, you do get those from time to time where, Damon Snacks Harrison was technically on the roster, Jalen Smith, etc. But good pulse, Chicken. Which of these four positions are the Packers most likely to address after the first 3 rounds of the draft? So I'm assuming, Eric, that you mean here they will not address it in the first 3 rounds. It's definitely not defensive end or defense. I'll say it's not defensive line. I guess theoretically, if maybe the board doesn't fall their way, but they will absolutely take a defensive lineman in the first 2 days of the draft. I think that completely goes without saying, and I would be stunned if we got to day 3 and the Packers have not selected a either defensive end or defensive tackle. So they'll get one of those for sure. I think the other ones are just really going to depend on who falls to them and what's available. I could see a world in which their first wide receiver is a 4th or 5th rounder. I could see a world in which their first corner is a 4th or 5th rounder. And here's the thing. They only have 3 picks, right? And you can see a world in which they go defensive end, defensive tackle, offensive lineman, something like that in the first 3 picks, if that just is the way that the board falls. I do expect them again to get some sort of defensive lineman in those first 3 picks for sure. It would not stun me if they got both defensive end and defensive tackle, but it's really, really difficult. And I think it's all going to be dependent upon how the board falls. But I think it could go in a variety of different directions. But the one thing I feel very certain about is defensive line will get addressed on the first 2 days of the draft. Curious to know your thoughts on Travis Hunter. I love him. If the Packers traded a Hall to go up and get him, I would jump out of my seat and would be all for it. I think he could be a wide receiver 1. And then a DB in certain packages, obviously an unlikely scenario, but would be something. I'm starting to really like this draft for day 2. I know you're not for a Rashid trade, but if it's a day 2 pick, nope, still not interested in a Rashid Walker trade. Like if it was like pick like 33, all right, it's like an early second rounder, I could probably be convinced into it. But then I'm going to need probably at least 2 offensive linemen out of this draft. And I'm going to have to be very, maybe go get a Jedrick Wills or something. Like I'm going to need to be a lot more, focused on how I go about attacking the rest of the offseason along the offensive line. So sure, there's always a price, right? I'm not saying it's impossible, but I would say in some real capacity that they should not do it or will not do it unless something crazy happens. And again, it would take, I think, a pretty premium pick in order for them to even consider it. As far as Travis Hunter, to me, he is my 3rd graded player in this class as of right now. Things can change. I'm very much a proponent of, hey, if there's a good to really good quarterback, like I think positional value is a ton. To be crystal clear, this is not a Green Bay specific board. This is just my players in this draft. I think Cam Ward has the ability to be a really great starting quarterback in this league. I loved his tape. I loved his competitive nature. I think he can be a stud. So he's number 1 on my list. I do have Abdul Carter slightly ahead of Travis Hunter. I would have 0 issue whatsoever if anyone wanted to put Travis Hunter number 1 on their draft board this year. He is a phenomenal player, really, really fun. He, obviously as a receiver is a playmaker, as a defensive back is a playmaker. And you get so much positional versatility. I would probably try to play him. If you just think like you get 65 snaps from a player, right? If you have a full-time starter at corner, like they'll play 60 some, maybe even 70 snaps in a game. I think if it's me, I want him in there on the obvious passing downs on offense and on defense, assuming that's like what my team needs, right? But in Green Bay, I probably want him as, in any sort of obvious passing down, I want him on the field. And in any sort of obvious passing downs on defense, I want him on the field. So I think there's so much incredible value there. I think there's no world in which he's not at least a number 3 wide receiver on any team. I think there's no world in which he's not at least a number 3 corner on any team. So if you're in nickel or if you're in 11 personnel, I want Travis Hunter in there. And it's not to say that he's not a good run defender or a blocker or anything like that. It's just you have to limit his snaps. So in key situations, 3rd downs, have to have it sort of plays. Travis Hunter is going to be in on offense. Same thing on defense. Must have it. We got to get a stop here. Travis Hunter is going to be in on defense. And I think there's plenty of ways that you can go about doing that, playing him still as 65 snaps per game. He's shown the ability he can play more than that. I don't think you want to do that just from a wear and tear standpoint, but I think you get a big time player, the ability to be a big time player on offense, and clearly a starting caliber corner from day one. There's a lot of value in that. So really love the player. Like I said, I have no issue at all if you wanted to put him 1st overall on the board. And, to me, he's right now number 3. We get to those super chats in just a moment. Happy Friday, Andy. Just wanted to say really enjoyed today's episode. You did a great job setting expectations and keeping it real. Mike McGee, I appreciate that a lot. It's always funny. I go into certain episodes being like, ooh, this is a really, really good one. And other times I'm like, yeah, I think this is a solid episode. And other times I'm like, I think I got across what I wanted to get across, but I'm not sure how it's going to be perceived. Today was one of those. I'm like, I think I kind of got across what I wanted to get across, kind of what are the needs, what are the wants, where can they pick certain positions in the draft? How can they attack this draft? Those are the things I kind of wanted to achieve. I think I got it across. So Mike, I appreciate the positive reinforcement, because sometimes I'm like, I think so, but you never quite know for sure. But I appreciate that. There's a weird feeling, by the way, I think I've maybe talked about this before, of I usually record the night before, because I don't like recording usually days before, because things can happen during the course of a day. So I usually wait until night to record. And then I record, I upload it, and I go to bed. And it's set to release at 5 a.m. And then I usually wake up around 7:30 in the morning, and I get up at 7:30, and it's now just like I immediately check my phone of like, did I say something stupid? Did I mess something up? Was there an error in it? Like, you never quite know. And it's not until you check your phone in the morning and quickly look through to like see if there was like any comments of like, hey, the sound wasn't on, or like something crazy, right? Or just like, hey, you said Aaron Rodgers instead of Jordan Love, or anything like that. It gets very complicated, or just it gets like not knowing exactly what the response is going to be to an episode. So I wake up every morning. It's not that I necessarily need it was good or it was bad. It's more of just like, did I screw something up in any major way? And just kind of going through that quick and being like, okay, whew, there was no crazy errors in the show. That's always a nice thing to kind of wake up to. And there has not been a time yet where I woke up to something. I think there's maybe one where there was no picture or something and I had to quickly upload it. But outside of that, for the most part, there hasn't been anything like that. Knock on every piece of wood in the house. All right. Well, it's unrealistic for a running back to go in the top 100. I think round 4 or 5 is possible. I'd love to see the Packers pick Cam Skadabo. As an ASU student, I'm biased, but he plays with heart. I'm really excited to watch him. I've not had the opportunity to throw him on yet. I've obviously heard great things. From all the outside things that I'm hearing, it sounds like he's a really fun prospect. And as far as Green Bay goes, I think you're probably looking at late day 3. It's really tough when you've got Jacobs and already have Marshawn Lloyd. Plus you have Emmanuel Wilson and Chris Brooks, who are 53-man roster players. There's just not that space there. But listen, if you get to anything 5th round or later and the best player on the board is a running back, just take it and figure out the rest later. You don't know what injuries are going to hit. And listen, if you go and grab a running back and he becomes like, let's just say you get the next Aaron Jones, right? Who was taken round 5, I think round 5 for Aaron Jones. If you go and get that player, it's not going to be like, well, what are we going to do now? We've got Emmanuel Wilson and Chris Brooks. No, Emmanuel Wilson and Chris Brooks are nice players, but if you find an Aaron Jones, you go and take that. You just take it. There's no questions asked. So they absolutely can take one, and you figure out the rest later. But I think you're probably looking at about round 5 is the earliest of when you kind of want to pull the trigger on a running back in this draft. Chargers are my AFC team, and he'll probably end up there. They love him for the offense. That is in regards to Skadabo. Gotcha. Adam Schefter mentioned there doesn't seem to be much trade interest in Jaire right now. Do you expect that to change? Personally, if releasing him is the only option, I'd rather keep him. Yeah, we've talked about Jaire a ton, and specifically if you don't get the ROI on it, of how you're going to have to kind of figure out. And we kind of heard Goody the other day saying they want to make sure they get the ROI on it. If there's not trade interest, and he's not the only one saying that, I think Jason Wilde talked about it on his radio show the other day as well, is that there's not interest in trading for Jaire. Then it becomes a very interesting question as to what do you do? I still think it probably ends up with him not being on the team, but it's going to be an interesting question. It would not stun me if Goody held out till, training camp to just see if is anyone willing to give anything. And then you end up with this weird situation or scenario as to like, how do you move forward? I really don't know what happens here. Again, my gut feel the entire time is that he's playing for somebody else, but I don't know how it changes again, unless some team just gets desperate for a corner via injury or just something happens at that position, especially a team that's ready to compete. It's tough. It's a tough sell. The same reason Green Bay is looking to potentially get away from Jaire. Some maybe, I don't know if it's locker room or just character or whatever it might be, concerns, the suspension, everything like that. And then playing 50% of the games over a 4-year period of time. Every other team's going to look at that same thing and say, you want me to give up a pick and $17 million this year so that I can get a player who, if I'm lucky, is going to play half of the games? It's a tough sell for opposing GMs. And you just basically have to find a GM that's willing to play the lottery and say, yeah, we're going to spin the wheel and we're just going to hope it comes up 23 and that he has this unbelievable season and stays healthy, which he has not shown the ability to do for 4 years now in the prime of his career in ages 24, 25, 26, and 27. Now imagine what it looks like at 28 and 29 the next 2 years, like and into his 30s past that. It's a tough sell for any GM. If you're a GM and you're reporting to an owner and you're saying, hey, we're about to trade a draft pick for a player that has missed half of his games over 4 years and maybe has some character concerns, and when he's been on the field hasn't been a good run defender, but we think he can be good, but it's $17 million plus a 4th round pick. It's a tough thing to explain. So just like Green Bay is willing to move on, other teams have to be willing to take it on, and I'm not sure there's going to be that team out there. I've heard a variety of things of where there is some interest, there's not some interest. Clearly not enough interest to get Green Bay to actually make a deal up until this point. John McCole-Hardman now doubles the number of Super Bowl rings on the Packers, joining the elite company of Zane Anderson, Brandon McManus, and Matt Orzik. That's a good stat, John. I would not, if you would have asked me to name the 4 players that have a Super Bowl ring, I probably would have got to Brandon McManus. I would have definitely got McCole-Hardman. I probably would have maybe got to McManus if you told me there were 4. I don't think I would have got to Zane Anderson or Matt Orzik. Although Orzik, I would have got to the Rams. So I probably could have figured that one out with time. Zane Anderson, I would not have got. Although Chiefs, yeah, I guess. I don't know. Any draft prospects that you think if they fall will be too good to pass up on for the Packers in round 1 or 2? I mean, this is basically just kind of asking like who I want Green Bay to take at 23, right? This could go in a variety of different directions. I finally got the opportunity to watch Jaire Alexander yesterday, as I kind of talked about on the episode today. Loved the tape. Absolutely loved it. Michael Williams was really, really fun. I think he's going to be somebody Green Bay loves. Now, he very will likely be gone by 23 as well. Shamar Stewart is another one. And again, people are going to have a love-hate with Shamar Stewart, but I could easily see Green Bay falling in love with him and picking him at 23. I think that the more interesting sort of scenario that you get to, and it's a tough sort of line to thread, but it's not completely out of the question, is what if all of a sudden you get to the draft and Shamar Stewart, Derek Harmon, Michael Williams, Jalen Walker, Ted McMillan, Matthew Golden, all those players, kind of the ones that you really look at and say, all right, these are kind of obvious Packers or obvious needs. Jahdae Barron, all of those guys are gone by pick 22. Then where do you pivot? If like, again, kind of the ones that everyone's been focusing in on and saying, yeah, these are such Packers players, where does Green Bay kind of go from there? I don't know that, Mike Green is going to be somebody that is their particular brand of vodka. I don't know that, James Pierce is going to be that guy. I don't know if they're going to have other corners that are ranked in that area of, pick 23, the draft, if Barron is gone. Do they pivot to offensive line then? Is that something that they would go with? Or did they just try to trade back at that point? Like those are the interesting ones, but kind of a lot of the names that are out there already for Green Bay loving. Derek Harmon, for me, Michael Williams is very much on that list. Shamar Stewart's very much on that list. Those are the guys to me that I think make so much sense for Green Bay. And I'd be in Jahdae Barron as well. If any of those guys got to 23, I would be very, very ecstatic. Good question. Creeley, hi, Andy. Just saw a trade package for Tyreek Hill and wanted your thoughts. It was Romeo, a third and a fourth for Reek and a fifth. Is that a ridiculous package? Goot would never do it, but would you? Yeah, I don't think there's any chance that Tyreek Hill really ends up in Green Bay. Whether it was earlier off-field stuff or just the age, the size, the non-blocking, I don't see any world in which Tyreek ends up in Green Bay. I don't think Romeo, a third and a fourth for Tyreek Hill and a fifth is like an absurd ask if you're Miami. I think that you get the better receiver and you're trading a third and a fourth for a fifth, or basically you take the fourth and the fifth and almost put it to the side. So, you're getting a better receiver and basically giving up a third round pick. Like, it's not a crazy ask if I'm the Dolphins, but I just don't see any world in which Tyreek Hill is a member of the Green Bay Packers. I would consider that deal if I were Green Bay, if I wanted Tyreek Hill on the team, but I just don't see it. Luther Burden at 23, no matter what, I am ready to get hurt again. Yeah, I wouldn't get your hopes up too much, Shiri, that he's going to be the pick, but man, do I love Luther Burden. I just don't see a world in which he doesn't become a successful receiver. I shouldn't say that. Any of these guys can bust. So I can clearly get to any of these guys not living up to expectations. That's just how the draft works. But man, is he so talented. He brings everything to the table. I talked the other day, well, there's three things that I need or that I want at wide receiver. They need to possess at least one of them. Run after the catch, route running / separation, or deep ball, just unadulterated speed that you can win deep down the field, right? You either need to be a deep threat, you need to be a consistent, great route runner and separator, or you need to be a run after the catch guy. You have to have one of those. There's nothing else. Like if you don't have run after the catch ability, you don't have separation ability, you don't have deep ability, what are you giving me as a wide receiver? It's just contested catches. Like I don't want to live in that world. So I have to have one of those three. To me, at least as far as the guys I've watched so far, he is the best run after the catch guy. He's physical enough. He's got the size, 6', 200, hits the height, weight, speed thresholds, and is fantastic and really dances well after the catch. Like he's really fun to watch. He has the 4.40 speed, and I have seen him win deep. Now, I don't think he's like this Christian Watson, Tyreek Hill, unbelievable deep threat, but he can win deep. He can get you some explosive plays down the field. And he's a really good route runner. I think his route running is going to get even more nuanced with time. And I love the way that he plays the game. And he is a separator. And I compared him to Stephon Diggs before I read anything. Daniel Jeremiah had him as Stephon Diggs. Matt Miller had him as Stephon Diggs. Like you see a lot of Stephon Diggs in his tape. Absolutely love him. If they picked him at 23, it would be probably my favorite Packers pick since Vonnie Holiday, which has been a hot second. And I would be doing some jumping jacks as well. So I am also ready to get hurt, but I'm not expecting Luther Burden to be the pick at 23. There's a chance he's gone. And even if he's there, I'm not sure that's the direction that Green Bay goes in, but I would be thrilled. The pick is one of Donovan, Easy, Luther, Nolan, or Amos in that order. Don't think it's going to be Amos. I don't think it's actually going to be Nolan. I think it could be Donovan. I don't think it's going to be Luther. If you told me it's one of those four, I would bet pretty aggressively that it was Donovan. But I also think there's going to be some other names that end up very much on that list as well, including Derek Harmon, including Michael Williams. Again, assuming that they're available, there's probably going to be a list like that. But I'll get into my predictions as we get closer and closer. I mean, if the board felt perfect, I mean, do I get to choose Abdul Carter in that situation? Realistic perfect. Jahdae Barron, Michael Williams, Derek Harmon. I mean, those would be the three guys that at least there's like a small chance that one of those guys is there. I think all three of them are gone, but those would be my three that immediately jump to kind of the top of my mind. Shamar Stewart in that conversation as well. Don't know how Andy would feel about that trade package, but I'm intrigued. Again, it's just more of like, I just don't see Tyreek Hill being a Packer. So like there's certain just like brain blocks that you can't get past. And like seeing Tyreek Hill as a member of the Green Bay Packers, I can't get past it. Sam hit the like. I appreciate that. All right, I'm going to get back to 3:03 p.m. for John in just a second. I want to get to these super chats. If I was willing to pay you $1 million, but you have to be totally off the grid in a cabin in the woods from April 23rd to 30th, would you take the money? Yeah, I'm going to take $1 million, Joe. If there is a super chat that you can do $1 million and that's what you would like to see, unless somebody would like to counteract it with more money and they have like 1.5 million to make sure that I cover the draft, in which case I would then take that and give you your money back. But yes, I would take $1 million to go off the grid. And just a week of, kind of I think we're back. Sorry about that. My internet totally died. I'm on my iPhone. I'm on my hotspot now. So hopefully this will be good enough. But yeah, internet totally just freaking died on me. So my apologies for that, but I'm back. So I don't know where I left off, but yes, I would take the $1 million. It would be, unless somebody wanted to give me 1.5 million or 1.1 million to then do draft stuff. But yes, I'll take it and then I'll unwrap the presents as soon as I get back from my week-long vacation. So I don't think I have to worry about that, Joe. But if you do have the $1 million super chat, don't do it as a super chat, Joe. I know you're considering it, but do it on a PayPal or something else, because I don't need YouTube to get the cut of the $1 million in that situation. So we'll work something out. DM me and we'll figure it out from there if that's the direction that you want to go in. But something tells me I don't have to worry about that too much. Beast Bumblebee, man, I want Jaire back. We need star power, and if he's healthy for even like 9+ games in playoffs, I'd rather have that than a conditional 7th. Might be worse than that. Might be nothing that you get in return. I totally understand it. I did a whole episode on the case for keeping Jaire Alexander. So I totally get it. I think there's clearly a argument to be made. It just usually when you get to the point of saying, hey, we're not going to do this. We're going to offer you up for trade. It usually doesn't come back very well. So we'll have to see what ultimately happens there. But I still think he's not back, but I understand the conversation. Yeah, I got that would have been really funny if I got the $1 million. I got it actually, and that's why I logged off immediately. He's gone. I took the $1 million. It's all done. I retired. It's amazing. So thank you so much for the $1 million, Joe O. That's why I went dark there for a while. All right, I said, what, at 3:03 p.m.? We'll get back to John Schmidt. Don't name random Packers. Go year by year, naming as many of the team as possible. Yeah, that could work too. I I don't want to know. I don't want to know how much my brain has forgot. Like I said, the immaculate grid is already making me really upset that I can't just immediately spin off players who have played for the Chargers and the whatever. Like, I'm already depressed by that. So I don't think I can do it. I don't want the challenge anymore. Just means I'm getting old. Thanks for everything, Andy. How likely do you think it is that LVN can make the jump and emerge as a viable pass rushing threat this year? Everyone seems to be writing him off. I think it's possible. I'm a pretty big believer that, once you get to like year 3, year 4, you kind of are who you are. You've kind of showed exactly what you are. Now, if there is an exception, a lot of time it is defensive end / pass rusher. Here's what we know about LVN, right? We know that he is an athletic freak. Height, weight, speed, maybe not the greatest change of direction in the world, but height, weight, speed, monster. As I've talked about in the past, if you're drawing up a sketch, if I were, doing a murder detective or like the sketch artist, and I read the scouting book and said, here's what an ideal defensive end looks like in a 4-3, it would be drawing a picture of LVN. He has everything that you look for at that position: long arms, strong hands. He's just it. That's exactly what you're looking for. And with pass rushers, sometimes it's not necessarily the game slowing down. It's not necessarily, just anything. It's more of, can you find that one kind of go-to move? Whether it's a long arm or a hump move or a spin move or a stutter step, a Euro step, whatever it might be, a hesitation, swiping the hands and arm over. TJ Watt's basically survived being a unbelievable star in the NFL with basically like one move. And if you can find that one move, it is remarkable at how much of a difference that can make. Because as a defensive end, the sort of crazy aspect of it is you just need to kind of, if you can hold up at the point of attack in the run game, right? And you're, let's say you get 30 pass rush snaps, you just need one. Now, it's not to say you can take the other 29 off and be completely ineffective, but if you get there one time and get that sack, get a forced fumble, get a big pressure that turns into an interception, you just need one of those plays. And if all of a sudden you do that through 17 games, you're either at 17 sacks or 17 big plays, and you're one of the better defensive ends in the NFL. So you get that one move, you figure out that one way to consistently get to the quarterback, or at least, once per game. All of a sudden it's a game changer. And then you get that one move, and now you figure out a counter off of that. Now I've got this one I can go to. Now I've got a bullet. Can I do a spin move off it? Whatever it might be. And that's how, when you say you build a pass rush plan, you just start with one. Let's master one move. If I'm DeMarcus Covington and I'm coming in with LVN, we need to master one move. We need to master one thing that's going to get him to the quarterback once per game with his unbelievable athletic traits, speed, effort, intensity, hustle, all of it. That's what I want first. Show me that one move that's going to get you there. And once you get that, all right, we've got that down. We know how to use that move. Now, how can we get to a second move and a move that counters it off of it? And by the way, you can throw, 5 fastballs just to set up your changeup. You might go pass rush after pass rush after pass rush after pass rush, showing the same move over and over and over, just so that you get him predictable, or you think you're going to be predictable. You go for it, then you counter it, and now you've got a sack. So if you can do a little bit of that, more of that stuff, that's what I want to see for growth from LVN. And you see it with pass rushers from time to time, where they figure out that one move and it's all over from there. The rest is kind of history, and they become a really good pass rusher in the NFL. I think he's more trending towards a Nick Perry at this point. And that's not the worst thing in the world. And I cannot stress that enough. Nick Perry never lived up to first round expectations. He never became the guy that everyone wanted him to be. And I think LVN probably is never going to live up to a top 12 pick in the draft, and probably never quite living up to what the hope was for him. But if you can still have a viable starting caliber defensive end that gives you good reps out on tape, yeah, I would have loved a Pro Bowler. I would have loved an All-Pro. I would have loved a Christian Gonzalez. But if you can still at least get a, solid piece on that defensive line that's going to help you, it's not the worst case scenario in the world, right? So that's where I want to see him get to first. I already think he's like a solid to good number 4 at worst, maybe number 3 edge rusher, which, by the way, you need those guys. Like those are still important as well. I want to see him show that he can be a good starter in this league, playing 50 snaps per game, 40 to 50 snaps per game, holding up at the point of attack, and getting, a couple, 3-4 pressures per game. That's where I want to see him get to. If he can get to there, then we'll, kind of continue from there. But I need to see him show that he can be a starting caliber player first. Can it happen? Yes. Am I holding my breath? Not entirely, but I do think there's a world that exists that we see a much better LVN at some point, whether it be this year or next year. I don't care if they don't reseed the playoff teams, but at least change the draft order so it aligns with it. The Buccaneers shouldn't get a better draft pick than the Packers when they got the higher seed. Totally agreed with that, Troy. No complaints there whatsoever. Just going to check on my internet really quick. Still no internet for me. That is crazy. All right, we'll stay on the iPhone. John Schmidt, do you think some of the free agent strategy the past 2 years has taken into account that Green Bay should be in for a haul of comp picks next year if they stick to their own resignings? They wouldn't be in line for a bunch of comp picks next year right now. They've signed more than what they've lost in Banks and Hobbs. If you're thinking like next year, they lose guys in free agency like Rasheed Walker, Sean Ryan, Malik Willis, et cetera, that leads to comp picks in 2027. That I could see. But I don't think that their strategy right now is involved around comp picks. And I think in general, it's bad to base any strategy based off of comp picks. Once you get to that point of if you lose 3 or 4 players and you're getting like a 3rd, a 4th, a 5th round comp pick, you need to be cognizant of what you're signing and when you're signing them to make sure that you're not counteracting if you want to get some of those. But I don't think it's overall wise to have strategies based off of that, because there might be a player in free agency that you fall in love with and really want to sign that could counterfeit your comp pick formula already. So I don't think that that's probably best practice, but I'm sure there's something in Green Bay's mind where they at least know if they lose some of those guys, they could theoretically get comp picks if it comes to that situation. So here's the thing, completely different position. So it's not an apples to apples comparison, but I remember loving Michael Finley's height advantage over competition. Adding Tet would make my day. I did a double take for a second because Michael Finley was the Badger / Suns player, right? Yeah. I'm like, Michael Finley, are we going for a basketball conversation? Obviously, Jermichael Finley. I don't know that I ever really put together the fact that Jermichael Finley was just Michael Finley with a Jur in front of it. I'm sure I probably did at some point. But yeah, Michael Finley, obviously star Wisconsin Badger back in his day. Really, really great NBA career. Yeah. I'm glad that I just got to remember Michael Finley because I don't always get to think about Michael Finley all that much. But Jermichael Finley also did give you that height and size advantage. Ted McKinley's a really interesting eval, and I like him. I think anytime you get out of like the norm of what a common receiver kind of looks and feels like, it's a little bit almost nerve-wracking of like, oh, this could go really bad. Like, is this going to be somebody that actually works in the league, or was he good in college because he had the height and separation, but now when you get more physical in college or in the NFL, it's not going to work the same? Those are always nervy. I think there's a reason that Goody went and saw him live, because he is sort of that unique evaluation, and just watching him on tape, I don't think probably totally does it justice for just how imposing of a player that he is. And I will tell you, for better or worse, when you see some of these guys in person, it changes your immediate opinion of them. For example, Quay Walker and Tyron Hopper, okay, were not my exact cup of teas in their respective drafts when they were selected. Tyron Hopper in the 3rd last year, Quay in the 1st round a couple of years ago. I get to the very first day of rookie minicamp, and I see Quay Walker and I see Tyron Hopper, especially Quay, but I see Quay and Tyron up close and personal, and you're like, oh, okay, I get it. I can understand. They're built. They look fantastic. Like, they have the physicality, they have the physique. Like, you can see him, and it's not just, I'm not talking just looks or like, all right, he's built. Like, that doesn't necessarily mean anything, but you can see the movement on the field. You can see the change of direction. You can see the speed. You can see the size. Like, it takes all of 2 seconds to be like, all right, I see it differently in person than what maybe it looked like on tape from time to time. So like I said, for better or worse, sometimes maybe that can cloud your judgment too. And it's great that they are first guy off the bus and look the part, but you have to actually go out and play the part. And that's an important piece of it. But you can sort of gain a better understanding of like, okay, I see what exactly you were seeing here. So, for Tet, I'm sure there's something in person that it gives you even a greater appreciation of him. Now it's, can he be that big time player in the NFL? He had the production. He's got the skill set. There's no question about that. I do question a little bit of how he deals with physicality, but he's a really fun player. Would not hate that pick at all if that was the pick at 23. How much of the dearth of sacks is due to Hafley over scheming containment? I think in some games it was. against more mobile quarterbacks. I don't want to say even over scheming. I think it was just sort of a necessary evil in some of those games. So I don't think it's necessarily just that. I think it was maybe a small piece of the puzzle, but not just that. And there were other games where there were far less mobile quarterbacks where they could not get to the quarterback either. So I think it's a piece of it, but not the full story, John. A couple of linemen in all defense. I still think they need a wide receiver probably from this class, but outside of that, I don't have a huge issue with that. James. Rick, if they can trade for Hill and not give up more than a third, they should do it. I probably disagree, but it would certainly be fun to see what he could do in green and gold. Yeah, I don't know, but I don't have a strong opinion on it one way or the other, I guess. Hill played in Kansas. He can play in the cold. Miami has too many distractions for him. Yeah, I guess. I mean, again, it's a much ado about nothing conversation. He's not going to be a Green Bay Packer. So he's a kind of a polarizing player as well as to whether or not people feel like, that you should trade for him or not. But it's just not going to happen. All three are on the board at 23. Would you take Harmon or Golden McMillan? I would probably take Harmon. I think Harmon's the safer eval, and I think you get a really good defensive lineman. I would love to see him and Kenny play together on the defensive line. And I think the really cool thing is I think you can play Kenny and Devontae, Kenny and Harmon, Harmon and Devontae. Like, I think you can really mix and match those pieces as well. So I would go Harmon. He's higher on my board right now, just my general board, not even Packers related, but I have Harmon a handful of spots ahead of both McMillan and Golden. And I go back and forth with McMillan and Golden. I have McMillan right now, one spot ahead of Golden, but that might change about 100 times between now and the draft. Was listening to Purple Daily today, something know thy enemy. Something know thy enemy. Yes, I talk about that all the time. They had a reckless speculation, anonymous, that Matt LaFleur has been extremely short and snippy with players. I don't see that. I don't get to see everything, and I'm not privy to everything that happens within the organization. I think if there's any coach that does a really fantastic job of towing the line between being a hard ass and being a player's coach, which is a really difficult thing to do, I think it's Matt. I think there's a lot of times where he really goes out of his way to make sure that, players' bodies are being taken care of and keeping an eye on it and having a pulse of the team and understanding what they need, while also demanding that they play at a certain level. So I think he toes that line well from what I have seen. That's just my view of it. I don't know how anyone would know that unless they had some sort of inside source or player saying that. I know he ranked like lower in like the coaching, like in the NFLPA poll, but it was still like a B+, right? It wasn't like some like crazy awful grade. I think he's a good coach. I think he's doing a good job. I think he toes that line well, but I don't have anything to back up what Purple Daily is saying. Should have read Jermichael Finley. I finally got to what you meant. I'm going to get to members chats the rest of the way. I've only got about 10 minutes left here, maybe a little bit less. Likely a dumb question, but what makes a guy a field stretcher? I know it's more than just 40 time. Is it really just as simple as, does he actually catch the ball when it's thrown deep? Not that simple, but what you're looking for is separation down the field. And if you're Tyreek Hill special, you can get that maybe just with speed, but it's really hard to do just with speed. So it usually comes with some form of speed and route running ability. And then the other thing too is like there's so much too high safety over the top that you almost need to have some contested catch ability down the field as well. With Christian Watson, you get a pretty good route runner, but that's got unbelievable size, knows how to stack corners, and then has the ability to kind of go up and get a ball from time to time as well. And it's not like he's the most efficient, deep ball wide receiver either. To some extent, Will, it is like, hey, can you go out and prove that you can come down with those balls when you're given the opportunity? It's not that simple, show separation down the field. But when you're watching it on tape, what you're looking for is at the catch point, how many yards of separation do they have down the field? If that separation is there, assuming that it will, even not necessarily even the catch point, when they're into the route, because sometimes the ball can be underthrown, right? Then the separation at the end is not the receiver's fault, it's the quarterback's fault. But taking the quarterback's fault aside, you're looking for separation ability, the ability to stack corners, and then that finishing ability. A lot of times, whether it's late hands or strong hands or just the ability to go up and get a ball, that can be very important to it as well. Especially Jordan Love, the anonymous tip said that Matt LaFleur got into a shouting argument with the front office personnel, and that led to the Packers reaching out to the Vikings through a reporter about, I don't know, the dude. Kevin O'Connell means to show that Matt LaFleur is not above replacement. Any sort of truth to this? Or, I haven't heard anything like it. It doesn't sound like something that would get to the Vikings, locker room or anything like that, but who knows? trying to get informed on a lot of receivers, and it's confusing how a 5'11" guy like Golden has talked about playing outside, but Egbuka, who's over 6 feet tall, is called a slot. Yeah, so that's not even just like a deep threat thing. That's just more of like how you handle, more physical, physicality and corners on the outside, and some of those contested catch situations as well. And Golden gets used in the slot as well. And I don't think he's like this 1A perfect outside wide receiver. Like that's just what he's made for. And then as far as, Egbuka, I do think there is some potential that he can play outside. It's just, I think he's more of a primary slot guy. So there's definitely nuance to it, Will. But you kind of look at what they played in college a little bit more, how effective they were on winning on the outside. How did they win on the outside? Could they win with route running or release off the line of scrimmage? Could they handle the physicality? Could they separate at the point of attack? Like those are all things that you're looking for an outside wide receiver. You're saying I look like Bryce Terang? Oh, I know. I want to look up Bryce Terang. I hope that's a compliment. He's way more handsome than I am. So I will take that if you're talking about me. I can see a little bit with me growing out the, kind of like the goat. When I grow out the beard, the goatee comes in a little bit stronger, which I actually do not like. And he does have the kind of beard at times as well. Yeah, I don't know. I would probably go with Bryce in this one. I don't want to bring Bryce's game down at all by having him compared to me. So I'm going to say advantage Bryce Terang on that one. Andy, thanks for making the offseason less of a barren wasteland. Cheese. Colin, I appreciate that. You jinxed it. Now the next episode will have no audio except for a part where you accidentally called Jordan Love Julian Love. That's probably true. Probably true. We won't pick up James Pierce just because I love him. He and Edgerrin on the same team. I'm excited to watch him. I watched, what did I have? These were my notes for James Pierce. I watched one game of him really early on, like after his first game. It was just Tennessee Chattanooga. He played 10 snaps. So that was all my notes. That was back in September 6th. I watched a little bit of James Pierce. Since then, I have not had the chance. So I'm very excited to go back and watch him. Did Jason Vrabel get demoted? I saw he wasn't the wide receiver coach this year, but instead a quality control guy. That's not true, is it? I would assume that I would have heard about that if that were the case. Of course, now my internet is running slow because I'm off my phone. Give me a second here. Coaches. Oh, he's the passing game coordinator. So Ryan Mahaffey is the wide receivers coach. I think that's what it was last year, if I remember correctly. So I don't think there's a change there. So Vrabel's still the passing game coordinator. So Mahaffey was promoted to wide receivers coach February 23rd of 2024. So that happened last year. Yeah, no change there. Yes, Burden does run through tackles. Box Boy, thanks for being a member for 5 months. Sorry for the frozen. Let's see. 1 million must have gone through. Love it. Greg, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate you a ton. Do I think that the Nate Hobbs signing is a precursor to last year signing McKinney and adding 3 safeties? I know our cornerback room isn't just as bad as the safety room was, but adding 2 would be. I do very much expect that they will add multiple corners in this draft in some real way. Whether that's early, late, I don't know. I shouldn't say multiple because they only have 8 picks, but I think they'll end up with more. I think they'll end up with probably 2 corners at some point in this draft would be my guess. So I don't know that it's like the complete makeover that you're looking for, like at safety, but I do think they're going to add some youth to that room. Not a Nick Perry reference. Better Nick Perry than Dayton Jones? Yes, totally agreed. I want cornerback at 23 from Michigan. Actually, one of the guys that I have liked the least so far, Will Johnson. I went and I watched his 24 tape. Obviously, there wasn't a ton of it due to injury. It was not good in 2024. So went back and watched 23, thinking like, all right, there's a lot of buzz of him coming out in 23. Great playmaker, ball skills. I got a little bit of Josh Jackson of like off coverage, pick sixes. Like he really kind of made us. He's not Josh Jackson. They're 2 totally different corners. Don't get me wrong. They play different styles. Johnson's more aggressive, etc. But I didn't love it. I just didn't love it. So yeah, I would probably stay away from him a little bit more than I think the consensus. He to me was more of like a second round corner than anything else. All right. What do we got? Yes, I will absolutely do a mock draft before the start of the I'll do a 7-round mock draft for Green Bay, and then I'll also do a full first round mock draft as well before we get to the draft for sure. What does a breakout season for Dontavian Wicks look like from your perspective for the season? Basically what we saw in 2023, but for 17 games. That's what I want from Dontavian Wicks, the end of 2023, but for 17 games. I want to see him have consistent catching the ball. We know he can separate. We know he's a great route runner. We know he can run after the catch. So I want to see consistency from it. He's a good run blocker. He's a really good run blocker. He's going to continue to get time because of that. To me, it's like 65, 1,100, 8 touchdowns, probably still 8 drops. But that to me is what a breakout looks like. I think he can be really, really good. I still believe it, but he has to show it. Thinking you can do it and actually doing it are two different things. And for Dontavian Wicks, it is time. Jordy Nelson was a sensei master at stacking corners. Yes, he was. I don't think Wicks was good at that. I know he's not looked at as a deep threat when he is. Would love to see him improve. Totally agree with that. And yes, Jordy was the master at doing that. Thornton Jr. does have drops and not a lot of production. Personally, after round 5, he would be a good get. I think he goes sooner, but I like him a lot too. Last year we thought we were set at defensive line and edge. This year they seem like a weakness with the mostly same players, which all set group could fall off this year. I think we could get more clarity on tight end. Like if Musgrave doesn't come through and is just kind of meh, then tight end looks a lot different in that scenario. I mean, certainly wide receivers in that conversation as well. Quite frankly, while I'm still a very big believer, quarterback is that, right? If Jordan goes out this year and has a year akin to or a little bit worse than he had last year, which isn't like that's still a starting quarterback, but it changes the calculus quite a bit of what you believe in him as like just what the ceiling is for Jordan. Like I think this is really a ceiling and sort of floor setting season for Jordan Love. Like you're in the crux of your career now. This is going to be your 3rd year as a starter. Hopefully he stays healthy. If he goes out and has a bad year this year, which again, I don't believe is going to happen at all, but that definitely changes how you view that going forward. So I'm not saying that. I'm not speaking it into fruition or into, whatever is going to happen into existence, I should say. But that would change things, right? If he came out and had a subpar year. Those would probably be the ones off the top of my head that I think, could be that. I mean, corner could certainly be that. If Nate Hobbs doesn't play as expected and Nixon comes back to life a little bit, that could be another issue. Will you have any guests at Hagemeister before the draft? I don't have any like planned guests, but I am hoping that there are some folks from Pack-A-Day that will be showing up as well. All right, friends, I do have to get out here. Got to get the kids to soccer practice, pick them up from school, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to be back next week, members Q&A, and probably another I think I'm doing Pack-A-Day live next week, I think on Wednesday night, but I'll have to double check that. We'll try to maybe do a little bit more live stuff coming up here as we get closer and closer to the draft. Obviously, week of is going to be insane. I will see you guys all very soon. Thank you so much for being here. Sorry for the internet issues. I'll talk to you all next time we're live. But until then, and as always, go Pack Go.